So the first step that we did was I made a wash, and the wash is made from food coloring and Mod Podge with a little bit of water. I wanted the jars to stay very translucent. I didn't want to add too much of a color to it. But using acrylic paint would make it obviously too heavy and you would not be able to see through the jar. So I wanted to just work with it in washes of color, shades of brown and green, to kind of give it that old, worn look. And this was the result of using food coloring instead of me using acrylic paint. I did end up using acrylic paint, but when I did use the acrylic paint, I used it only to stipple a little bit of white on it. And that's the part that I wanted to, stand out. So it did look a little bit more worn. So I just took a little brush and just tapped on some white acrylic paint, and if I felt like it was too heavy, I just used my finger to wipe it off, and that's the end result of that. And so to give it more of a look and to add more texture, I added some moss onto the design. Now, I used the glue gun to put the moss on, and I felt like this was the most effective way to do it. I did try to use other glues and resin to get the moss to stick on, but I was a little bit more unsuccessful. It seemed like it didn't want to stick at all, so I think the glue gun is the best bet. There will be some times when the moss will fall off because the glue gun does not adhere to glass very well, but it's okay, it's not that big of a deal. You can just go back in and add more moss. Here I'm adding twine to both sides of the jar, creating a little loop at the top, and this is where the fairy is going to hold the jar. And I just wrapped it around twice. I didn't want to wrap it around too many times. For me, it took away too much of the features of the jar, so I just wanted to be very careful on how thick I made that rope around the jar. And I secured it with a little bit of hot glue, and then in its place I added some moss. And I just made another wash with a little bit of paint and some alcohol. Again, I didn't want to make it too heavy, and I used the alcohol just so it could dry really fast. I just went in there with the wash, and that is the result. It looked really good. It looked really worn. I was pleased with that. So to fill our jars, we use a product called Art and Glow. Art and Glow is a glow powder that I purchased on Amazon. It's a very strong powder, and I'll show you in a little bit what it looks like in the daylight. And then I added in some glow-in-the-dark paint that I purchased at Hobby Lobby. And then I added some resin. I just wanted to make sure I gave it a nice stir before adding it into the jar. And I put the resin in there, in the jar, and, it was really easy to get in the jar. I just had to kind of scoop it out and it dripped right in. And so I just kind of rolled the jar around a little bit with the top on it, because when you cure it, it's going to secure the top. And I rolled it around just so it can coat every aspect of the jar. And then I cured it. And this is without me curing it. You could see it was really bright and blue in the daylight. And so for the flowers, I purchased these flowers at Hobby Lobby. I liked them because they were really tiny and I couldn't find tiny flowers anywhere else. So I just sprayed them with a little Loctite and then just added some glitter just for a little effect, just so they could show out a little more. And these are the skeletons I purchased from the Dollar Tree. They came 4 in a pack, which is really cool. And they're really, really, really flexible. And our skeletons, I come with a little loop on top, so I just popped that off. And then I just got a little sandpaper just to sand it out. And this is also good to do so the flowers can stick to the glue a little bit better and the glue could adhere to the head a little bit better, and it works out better, so everything's not slipping off. After I put all of that on, I added a little bit of silicone glue to the top just to make sure they were super secure. And I wanted to show you a side-by-side comparison of the skeleton. So I ended up going back in and adding some detail and color to them because I felt like they were too plain. And so with this, I did the same thing. I made some brown and black wash, but actually brown, black, and white paint washes with Mod Podge, and this time acrylic paint. And I went in and just started with the brown and just kind of, tried to get in the cracks, the grooves, you know, to kind of give it more definition. And I just kind of painted that around the entire skeleton. There was no specific rhyme or reason or pattern to it. I just kind of threw it everywhere. And after I worked with the brown, I ended up going in with some black, a darker color, and then, you know, tapping it around. I ended up taking like a little paper towel and kind of wiping most of it away, not to actually get rid of the color, but to get rid of the shine, make it a little bit more dull, and you know, push it through the cracks a little bit. And then I went in with some white and smeared that around, and it gave it more like a dusty type appearance. And I really was happy with the end result of these skeletons. They weren't as dry and dull and boring as they were before. They actually had a little life to them. And that is a side-by-side comparison. Once again, you can see the difference, store-bought versus hand-painted. In order to create the wing, we used a piece of copy paper, just standard copy paper. We used a permanent marker to trace around the design over the laptop screen. We made sure the design was completely traced, and when it was, we flipped the paper over and just retraced the design, paying special attention to the smaller details, the thinner lines, and making the outside ridge a little bit more bold. We went ahead and cut the paper out, and once we cut the paper out, we took it and placed it on a piece of iridescent cellophane using a glue stick to secure the paper to the cellophane. Once the paper was secured to the cellophane, we went ahead and added a little bit more of the glue around the area, so when we folded the paper over, it would create a nice seal around the wing. And then used a heat gun to heat up the area, smooth out any wrinkles that were there, and this also helps shrink the edge around the wing, creating a nice seal. And once everything looked good, we went ahead and cut it out. When we cut it out, though, we made sure that when cutting around the edge, we cut far enough so we wouldn't puncture the seal, but we also wanted to cut close enough so it would look really clean and polished. And so we took advantage of the ridge underneath the spine. We just put a little hot glue there and stuck the wings right underneath the spine. The idea for this creation was to make the fairies appear as if they were flying, as if they were in motion. So we positioned the legs and then added hot glue in the joints sockets to give it the appearance as if it was flying. We also tweaked the spine a little bit to give it more of a curvature. And for the arms, because they would be holding lanterns, we would take the joints and just give them a little bend. And that would create the shape of the fairy actually being able to hold the lantern. And then we just took the twine and just pushed it between the two middle fingers to secure it. And you could even add a little hot glue. And this was what the fairy looked like holding the lantern and in position. And this is what our fairies look like when they were completely finished and put outside for display. I really enjoyed making these. These were really fun to make. They were really easy. They were absolutely cute, super adorable, and price efficient, most of all. We spent about a total of $4 to make these. We ended up making 20 plus, and we still had some pieces left over from the project. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy this video, please give this video a like. Please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We intend to put more content on the channel more often. Once again, thank you, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Be blessed, and most importantly, take it easy.